So it was Gary Breen who was on co-commentary duty alongside Nathan for Off the Ball at the Emirates Stadium yesterday. Initially talking to Nathan about the number of empty seats at the Emirates Stadium yesterday, albeit it has been a good week for them in comparison to the horror show of the previous 7 days, having won at the San Siro on Thursday evening and followed up with a Premier League win yesterday. And they finished it by discussing Manchester United's win over Liverpool 2-1 at Old Trafford in the early kick-off in the Premier League on Saturday afternoon. To discuss that, we are being joined by Andy Mitten. Andy, I guess there was a lot of negativity in the air after those defeats to Tottenham and to Newcastle and the rather insipid way in which they approached the first leg of the Champions League last 16 knockout tie against Sevilla in Seville. But that's now 3 Premier League wins in a row. Chelsea and Liverpool beaten. A top 4 place looking almost secure. They're 9 points clear of Chelsea now with 9 games to go. So Jose turning the tide a bit again.
Yeah, it's been a very good couple of weeks for Manchester United. Had you asked me about the mood at half-time at Selhurst Park, I would have said it was terrible. United were absolutely dreadful last Monday night, but the second half was fantastic, scored 3 goals. People have been saying there hasn't been enough great Manchester United moments. Well, there was at Selhurst Park last week, a last-minute winner, the players running into the fans, a great goal. And that spirit, I think, carried forward onto Saturday. And it's been a season of sort of mood swings among Manchester United. You have 2 or 3 really good weeks, and then you have a bad week, and people, they start to question the players, they start to question the manager. But there's a real high around at the moment. And as you said, the league position looks very strong, so strong that United can focus on the cups, which they need to do this week, with Tuesday's game against Sevilla, and then the FA Cup game at home against Brighton on Saturday. I mean, that's a very favourable draw. Sevilla are a very good team, but Manchester United could have been drawn with Real Madrid, with Paris Saint-Germain. It could have been much, much worse. And the 0-0 draw in Seville, I would say it was not a good Manchester United performance, but it was a good result. And I'm confident with United's home form because the team has not lost at home. Lost once at home in the last year, and that was against Manchester City. The previous home defeat was also against Manchester City. Sevilla are not Manchester City, so I'm pretty confident going into the game tomorrow night and also the Brighton game on Saturday.
The win of the weekend was obviously built on a first half performance where they took their chances, and both goals were derived from fairly agricultural means. Route one ball, one off a flick on, and another with a little bit of fortune off a deflection that led to Marcus Rashford's second strike. But it just seemed to me watching it that it was built on winning the second balls in that first half. That certainly for the first half an hour, any second ball that needed to be won, it was a Manchester United player that got to it, whether on the ground or in the air. And it just, to me, it said an awful lot about the way they were playing for their manager and the way they were playing for each other.
Yeah, I think it was a deliberate tactic of Jose Mourinho. I think he started with a 4-2-3-1, but it actually looked like a 4-4-2, especially when Liverpool had possession. And they had a lot of possession right at the start of the game. I think Romelu Lukaku, he's known as a goal scorer, but he's much more than that. And he's winning balls. He won a lot of balls in Sevilla, when often he was the only man played up front and he had nobody around him, and that was a struggle. At Old Trafford it was slightly different. He won the ball which set up Marcus Rashford. Rashford has been profligate sometimes with his finishing, but on Saturday you could see his confidence was up. He stepped past Trent Alexander, who was criticised, and he finished fantastically, not just once but twice. 2 goals in 10 minutes against Liverpool at Old Trafford. When you're a Manchester lad, when you're a United fan, when you're 20 years old, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. And Rashford has had times this season where he struggled. No one's really complaining when he was dropped for the start of 2018. He'd scored 1 goal in his previous 8 league starts, and he hadn't scored when he'd come on as a substitute either. I don't think Alexis Sanchez's arrival helped him get more minutes, but he came on Saturday because he had to, because Anthony Martial wasn't available, and he was superb. And Rashford is not Manchester United's biggest name player, but already in his short career, he scored the winner at Manchester City away. He scored 2 against Arsenal, 2 on his debut in a key European game. He scored at West Ham, brilliant goal in a huge FA Cup match. So he's doing well in the big matches. But young players, he just needs to find more consistency, and that's a conundrum which Jose Mourinho has. He has it with Anthony Martial as well, and he has it with Jesse Lingard, and that's probably the difference between Manchester United and Manchester City. He just needs more consistency from more of his players. But on Saturday there were no complaints about a lot of the performances from the majority of players. Ashley Young playing at left back. You mentioned that Liverpool were not able to get the ball to Firmino. Well, Mohamed Salah struggled as well against Young. I think he read him quite well. He knew what he did. He knew that he tends to step in from the left. And so Young was one of many excellent Manchester United players. Eric Bailly was back. He was excellent. He even scored. A man who managed to beat David De Gea. And Lukaku, Rashford and McTominay. He's played 19 games for Manchester United. He looked like he played 190 games. I had my doubts when McTominay started. I'm still not completely sold on him, but I can see that the manager puts a huge amount of trust in him. He rarely loses the ball. He looks composed. He's efficient. He does exactly what his boss asks of him. So you can see why he's getting picked.
Yeah, there was a bit of talk after the game about McTominay. Jose Mourinho almost issuing a smackdown to some supporters that had criticised McTominay early in the game after he opted to pass the ball backwards instead of trying to get the team going forward. And I thought, Andy, and maybe give us your thoughts on this, that the comments of Nemanja Matic after the game on McTominay were notable. He said that he's a joy to play with, fights for the team, and in reference to what you've just said, he plays like a guy who's spent 5 or 6 years in the Premier League, and it's far easier for Nemanja Matic, I would have thought, to play with Scott McTominay than it is Paul Pogba.
Yeah, he does exactly what his manager asks of him. And I saw what Mourinho said about the reaction from supporters. And I actually asked Mourinho after he'd said that about the atmosphere, because he's been critical of it, but it was the best it's been at Old Trafford on Saturday for years. It was fantastic. And the Liverpool fans were decent as well, I have to say that. I posted some footage of him singing that Allez, Allez, Allez song after the game. It drove me mad that I couldn't get it out of my head. Even though Manchester United had beaten Liverpool, I've got this song bouncing around my head because I stayed after the game and Liverpool fans just kept singing that song over and over again. But McTominay is more predictable than Paul Pogba. That is a negative and a positive. And in Mourinho's eyes, it's a positive. So Pogba is a player who dares, who takes chances, who takes risks, who tries to beat a man. You're not really going to see that from McTominay, but you can see why that Jose Mourinho likes a player like that. Pogba's had illness. He's having his most difficult time since he joined Manchester United. There's not an issue between him and the manager. I know that for certain. But he needs to get his form back. He needs to be playing, and he needs to be standing out in games like Liverpool at Old Trafford. And he hasn't really had he hasn't really done that since joining Manchester United. He's been brought to change those big matches, and he had a terrible game against Liverpool last year. But then games between United and Liverpool have been really poor, pretty consistently. So I found it quite refreshing. I know I might see it through the red-tinted spectacles of a Manchester United supporter, but I thought it was a really, really good game. United were excellent in the first half, and I thought Liverpool played really well in the second half. And it had a level of entertainment which has been lacking between games featuring England's two biggest and most successful teams.
What were your thoughts on the performance of Alexis Sanchez, Andy? Because on Monday against Crystal Palace, again, you can't really fault his effort and his application, but nothing happened for him. And with the ball, it was an appalling display, really. Even the simplest of passes didn't quite come off for him, although he did have a hand in the goal when it came to winning the game at the very end. But again, on Saturday afternoon, again, full of effort, full of running, but not an awful lot of inspiration. Why is he struggling?
I think he's at a new club and he's trying to fit in with a new system. He probably did the best thing I saw on the pitch on Saturday, aside from the goals, where he just managed to beat a few players with his tricks and heels and win the ball at a pretty important time in the game when Liverpool were pushing for a late equaliser. And Manchester United fans, including myself, were watching the game through the fingers thinking, just blow the whistle. And when that 6-minute sign went up, everybody thought, where has that come from? It was that type of game. But your main point is right. Sanchez didn't play well at Crystal Palace. A lot of United players didn't play well. Pogba didn't play well at Crystal Palace. These are the biggest name players on the biggest wages. And I know that's not always a reflection of what they should and shouldn't do. But it was Marcus Rashford who was the standout. I think with Sanchez, he's not settled in yet. He's popular among the players. He's training well. And he has to find his role in the team. He's joined and it wasn't always obvious where he was going to play. And sometimes with a player like Sanchez, and I watched him very, very closely at Barcelona, he's versatile to a fault. So at Barca, his job was basically to get Lionel Messi the ball because he played a subservient role. At Old Trafford, he's the main man. His job is to create, to spark. he's versatile. He can play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play in the central role. And he hasn't really found where the best role is for him yet. His best game was his first game, that was against Yeovil. But he'll be judged against far better teams than struggling fourth division sides in the FA Cup. He'll be judged against teams like Sevilla. And it's up to people like Sanchez, who's got experience of playing against Spanish sides, to play a standout, to be absolutely brilliant, to win the tie. That's what he's been brought for.
Andy, maybe from a more neutral point of view, what did you make of Liverpool, having watched them at the weekend? Because I guess it's the second time United have played them this season. They've taken 3 points, or 4 points rather, from the 6 on offer. And there is an outside chance, if United get beyond Sevilla, that these two sides could meet in the quarterfinals, or maybe even further down the line in the Champions League. So it may not be the last they see of each other this season. And for once, Mo Salah was kept quiet.
Yeah, he's been brilliant, hasn't he, this season? He's maybe even going to be voted the Player of the Year for the Premier League. I looked at Liverpool as a confident team. I could see that in the fans. I could see that in the way that they were playing. They've gone 7 games unbeaten. I think this is a team which is their best side since 2014, when they had Luis Suarez, who was the best player in the league in that season, and they came close to winning the league. Or as Manchester United fans taught them, you nearly won the league. But Klopp has got them playing. They don't seem to miss Philippe Coutinho, who settled in well at Barcelona. I'm not watching Liverpool live every week, but I was at Anfield on Friday night. I did speak to a lot of people there around the Manchester United reserve game there against Liverpool. And I spoke to people who know what's going on there, and I was just trying to build up my level of information ahead of the game at Old Trafford on Saturday. And there's a buzz around Anfield. There seems to be stability off the pitch. I was really impressed by the new main stand. They seem to be more balanced than they were maybe under the previous owners. Jurgen Klopp is hugely popular. He's very charismatic, and he's got some very, very good players. I like Emre Can, Salah, Firmino. Those front three are very effective. Would I like to draw Liverpool in the Champions League? Well, you're going to be playing very, very good teams. I'm really split on it, because I'm still scarred by memories of the Europa League games in 2016 when United were truly dreadful. So on one hand, I think United need to avenge that at some point in a cup competition. And Liverpool don't have Coutinho, who was the best player at Old Trafford in the second leg in that game. And on the other, Liverpool are not Barcelona. They're not Real Madrid. If Manchester United are to go through against Sevilla, then Liverpool would actually be one of the more favourable draws. Over the 2 league games this season, United have drawn away at Anfield and shown that they can do that. Done it twice now under Jose Mourinho, albeit frustratingly so, because those games were not a spectacle. But finally pulled that performance at Old Trafford and beaten Liverpool and stopped their main threats playing. And they do have some very, very good threats. And if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be feeling pretty good about Liverpool at the moment, because Liverpool do not have Manchester United's resources, nor Barcelona's, nor Real Madrid, and yet they're pushing. They would have gone above Manchester United had they won on Saturday, and I think they've got some very good players, and that's the last compliment you're going to hear from me about Liverpool from a Manchester United fan.
Finally, Andy, you've already mentioned, and we said that things are looking pretty secure from a United point of view in the Premier League. Now that all 4 teams will be going straight into the Champions League group stages, there are 9 clear of Chelsea, 9 games remaining. So the week that's in it, they can focus solely in the cup competitions, try and win another trophy or 2 under Jose Mourinho. They've Brighton in the quarterfinals of the cup this weekend. Tomorrow night, so are you expecting an entirely different approach to the game against Sevilla in comparison to what we saw in the first leg? Or will it be just another case of Jose Mourinho doing just about enough to get the job done and not really caring about how it looks or the manner in which it's achieved?
I think his priority will be the win, but he has to do something differently to the first leg, because I've never seen a game where Manchester United had so few chances in comparison with the opposition. I watched the scoreboard in Sevilla in the first leg, and it was just ticking up through the second half. Manchester United shots on target 3, Sevilla 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. It's not what you expect with Manchester United. I think it will be different. Mourinho knows what Old Trafford is like for a big European game. He described the atmosphere as hell when I asked him about it, when he used to come, when he came with FC Porto. If you're Manchester United at home to Sevilla, given the form of the team, given the players it's got, given the lack of injuries, you've got to go for Sevilla. This is a Sevilla team which has conceded 4 goals on 4 or 5 occasions so far this season. They have improved under their new manager in 2018, but United have got to go for Sevilla just as they went for Liverpool on Saturday, and I fully expect them to do so. It has the potential to be a great European night, and United should be careful, because the last time Sevilla came to Old Trafford, it was for Rio Ferdinand's testimonial, and they raced into a 2-0 lead. Now, the last team to score 2 at Old Trafford in the first half, until Burnley did it recently. But Mourinho, he knows that Sevilla have got good players. He commented before the first leg about the little changes that Montella has made, the distance between the fullbacks and the central defenders. He's paid them an incredible amount of detail, because it's a hugely important game. And I don't expect Manchester United to win the European Cup this year, but I do expect them to get past Sevilla. And a lot of the people I spoke to in Sevilla, they have a similar opinion. But Sevilla have got some very, very good players, and they've had some exceptional results this season, and some horrific ones as well. I think United are more dependable and more predictable to get the results, and Mourinho's all about results. Okay,
on a slightly different tangent and aside, you wrote about a young Brazilian named Arthur, who was signed by Barcelona from Grêmio at the weekend. Just 21 years old, 30 million they've paid for him, and there could be another 9 million in add-ons. And when you were speaking to the former United midfielder Anderson, you told us that he had been raving about the type of player that this guy was, that he was the best player in Brazil. Tell us a little bit about him and why Barca have gone after him.
Well, I know about him because Grêmio are from Porto Alegre, and my wife's from Porto Alegre, so I tend to go there every year or two. And onto that, I travel around and I interview lots of different people, because that's my job. So Anderson was one of the people that I interviewed this year. And when I was there in December, I arrived in the city just as they won the Copa Libertadores, which is the South American equivalent of the European Cup. And they were planning to play Real Madrid. And all the fans and the people at the club were bemoaning the fact that Arthur was not going to be able to play. And I met Rodrigo Possebon, who played 8 games for Manchester United, and he was just saying, this team, they're going to win the South American, they're the best team in South America in terms of the competition they've won. But actually, they've only got 1 or 2 players who would be good enough to go to a top European team. And he said one of them stands out, and that's Arthur, or Arthur, as you call him if you're from Manchester. And then I met Anderson a few days later, and he said the same thing as Rodrigo Possebon, that this guy's got the potential to be like the next Andres Iniesta, that he would fit in well with the style that Barcelona play. And he seems to be a bargain to me. I know there are no guarantees, and I would have given a similarly glowing report of Andreas from Valencia before he signed for Barcelona, because he was doing really, really well, Portuguese, and he struggled. He cost £50 million, and he struggled at Barcelona. So there's not always a given that a player will do well at Barcelona, because Andre Gomez, he struggled, and they're probably going to let him go, and Arthur is the main man. But €30 million plus variables, I think he could be an absolute bargain if he's as good as people who know a lot about football think he is, and think he can be, and playing with better players. Because that Grêmio team's a good cup side, but he's gone from the equivalent of leaving, Everton and joining Barcelona. And I think he, from what I'm told, because I've only seen him play live twice, that he can be a very, very good player for them. And I think moving to Spain is much easier than moving to England when you're a Brazilian and you're making your first step out of South America, because cultural links are much stronger, and the linguistics, it's much easier to learn Spanish when you're Brazilian than it is to learn English.
Okay, Andy, brilliant stuff as always. Thanks a million.
Thank you.